I'm standing here with Adrian Bridge, who's Managing Director of Taylor's, at the Taylor's Lodge, which, as you can see, has the most beautiful view. Adrian, what are we looking at here in Porto?
Well, we're looking here at the historic city of Porto. Behind us we've got this wonderful backdrop of the Serra Pilar, this ancient church, and then this extraordinary bridge that connects the two parts, which was often attributed to Eiffel, but in fact it was one of his students. But it has that same signature sort of styling. And this really connects the two parts of the city together.
And this famous river, of course, is where the port would come from, up in the valleys.
Well, historically, that's right. In the spring, the port came down the valley and it was brought up the hill here to Taylor's. So the older companies are here at the top of the hill because the river used to flood. So
really?
Us old boys here at 1692, top of the hill. The new chaps down the front there, sort of Sandyman, 1760. They're down closer to the river.
They're the new guys.
Well, they are. Yeah, I mean nowadays, I think from a tourist point of view, they're obviously closer to where the tourists come to and fro. But obviously, further up the hill, we have this tremendous privileged view of the city. And the city of Porto, as you can see behind me, is an incredible place. It's many parts of it hasn't changed since medieval times. It's dominated by a number of church buildings, and of course that extraordinary Clericus Tower that we see up there.
It's an incredible city to look out on, with all of the terracotta and the terracotta on the roofs here. Is this part of Taylor's?
Well, that's right. What we've got around us are the Taylor's port lodges, and underneath that is where we are maturing port. What's always interesting with the roofs is you can tell almost what sort of port is being aged underneath.
Really?
If they're lighter, then they would typically have vats where we have a low amount of evaporation, whereas these very dark colours that we see are because underneath the casks, well, we have more evaporation every year. So colour of the roof actually indicates what port's being aged underneath.
So the roof, the terracotta on the roof, has absorbed the evaporation over years?
That's right, because obviously terracotta tile is a natural product. It will absorb the evaporation, and the evaporation that's coming up from port, will have an organic content and does stimulate the sort of growth of this sort of darker colour on the tiles. And yeah, that's how you can tell the difference in the port lodges.
Just looking at the rest of the lodge, you've got a fabulous restaurant here. I've seen some of the huge casks just inside your reception area and so on. I mean, it's very much kept that sort of history of port and that feeling of Taylor's heritage, hasn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, this has been our, where we've been based for the last 323 years. This is, if you like, the core of the family business. And obviously keeping this as it is very important for us. The restaurant itself was, in fact, built and opened for Natasha's and my wedding. So back in 1989 we actually built this, and in fact my mother-in-law insisted just before the wedding that we had a terrace, and so this terrace was built over, there's a little road underneath, terrace was built over, and the first time there was a weight test was when we came dancing out at the wedding night. So
it's still here.
It went well.
It went well. Fantastic. Nice to find out a bit more about the lodge.